guter Kontakt ist auf jeden Fall auch unser nächster Speaker. He is the former designer and UX director for Time magazine, and now he's the CEO and founder of Academy. He was responsible for the redesign of Time.com, Money.com, the whole broad range of their internet sites, and he's here today. We're very proud to have him, and we'll welcome him on this stage with the warm applause that is particular to the 15 Seconds Festival. Please give it up for Adam Perlis.
Thanks so much. Thank you, everybody. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Guten Tag. My name is Adam Perlis, and I'm the former design and UX director for Time magazine. So recently, I founded my own company, Academy, which is a UX and design thinking consultancy. And we're focused on bringing UX and design thinking into companies. And today, we're going to be talking about how 5-day design sprints can transform your organization. I want to make sure I'm pressing the right button here. OK, great. I'm going to go back. Awesome. So when you guys think of a designer, do you think of somebody who plays with colors and pixels and fonts? Or do you think of a problem solver, a strategist, somebody who's going to solve challenges for your business? I think of the latter. And chances are, if you work for one of these companies, you do too. Google, Apple, Facebook, all these companies have harnessed the power of design thinking in transforming their products, services, and strategies. And if that's not enough evidence, according to a 2015 study, design-led companies have outperformed the S&P 500 by an extraordinary 211%. But what is design thinking? Well, it's a holistic approach to problem solving. It puts UX and creative strategies into the hands of people who are typically not creative and helps them achieve their goals and think about the users first. It's the belief that your users are at the center of everything that you do, that data-driven decisions are better than intuitive ones, and that spending 6 months developing a product and not testing with a single user is wasted time, money, and resources. I want this type of thinking to permeate through the culture of your companies, because companies that put design thinking at the heart of their strategies win, and they have a huge impact on the bottom line. So let's look at an example. Airbnb. Back in 2009, they were on the verge of going bust. They were only making $200 a week per listing, and they had a hypothesis that bad quality photos were to blame. So what did they do? They went and spent some time with their users in New York. They bought a plane ticket. They rented a camera. They took some amazing pictures of the properties, and they started listing them. And lo and behold, the result was they increased their listings to about $400 per week in revenue per listing and effectively saved the company. And now they're one of the most valuable startups in the world. This is what Airbnb looked like back in 2009. Low-quality pictures, pretty, frankly, poor design. No offense, Airbnb. This is what it looks like today. Drastic difference. We look at another example, P&G, one of the biggest companies in the world. One of their flagship brands, Oil of Olay, was struggling. They were facing declining sales. They were really marketing to women in their 50s who had wrinkles. Well, it turns out, after doing a user study, that women in their 30s and 40s had a much different set of diverse skincare needs. And so what did they do? Well, they launched a whole series of new products that addressed these needs for women in their 30s and 40s. And as a result, they ended up broadening their client base, bolstering their sales, and essentially save a failing product line. Back 10 years ago, they were selling one brand of Oil of Olay for $3.99 per bottle. Now, they average about $40 per bottle. This is what Oil of Olay looked like 10 years ago. Today, I can't even fit all the products on this page. So you might be saying, well, how do I do all this stuff? Well, enter design sprints. Design sprints are a 6-step methodology to solve and test UX problems in just 5 days. I've been running design sprints with some of the largest companies in the world and seen tremendous results. In fact, Google just published a book called Sprint, New York Times bestseller last year, and they've been using it internally, as well as other companies like Airbnb and Facebook. But most importantly, design sprints are about getting buy-in. Buy-in from your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders, and your users early in the process so that everybody feels like their voice is being heard. Because companies that do this, they have tremendous success. And the reason is because people come up with better ideas together than apart. We're so accustomed to working in silos. Design sprints bring everybody together in the room so that everybody can have a voice. So your ideal team size, you're looking at about 5 to 7 people. You're going to want a decider. This is your boss. This is somebody who's going to make decisions. Your facilitator. This is someone who's going to be your sprint captain. They're going to facilitate discussion, listen to everybody in the room, write things down, organize your sprint. You're going to want a design expert, a tech expert, and you're going to want a product expert, and then 2 field experts who are going to provide valuable insights into everything that you do. So how do I run a design sprint? Well, we mentioned the 6-step methodology. The first phase, discovery. This is your UX research. Sketch and wireframe is next. Design is next. Prototyping, user testing, learn and repeat, and develop and launch. We're going to go into detail about these. Our first phase is discovery. You're going to want to spend about 2 weeks ahead of your sprint doing a ton of research, talking to your users, looking at customer logs, complaint logs, talking to your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders. You're going to want to do research on, maybe you have some data and analytics. All these things are going to be done ahead of the sprint so you can identify problems that you want to focus on. You can do things like customer journey mapping. This is one that I did with a top 3 dating app. We were looking at the flow of what happens when someone messages one person, and then you play this waiting game, and we see what happens next. And we were looking for opportunity areas, things that may be falling off in the process. Customer journey maps are a great way to figure these kind of things out. You're going to also want to do some competitive research. So at time we looked at New York Times and The Guardian for inspiration. For maybe they've solved the problem that we were trying to solve, and they've already done it already. So why reinvent the wheel when a problem has already been solved? So the first thing we're going to do is identify some of those key problem areas. At time, one of the big ones was not enough people were swiping through galleries. Top 3 dating app, the user sign-up process was way too long. At a top 3 financial institution, our users couldn't distinguish between branding assets, and it's causing confusion. These are the type of problems you're going to want to answer in your sprint. When we move into our next phase, we're going to basically have put them into a new format called How Might We? So how might we get users to swipe through more photos in our galleries? Or how might we make the user sign-up process more efficient without diluting the user experience? Or how might we reduce confusion amongst users to get them to their desired goals faster? And we're going to sketch some solutions. And that's our next phase. We're going to sketch them, we're going to come up with some ideas, and we're going to wireframe it all. So how does this work? Well, you're going to need some tools. You're going to want some Sharpies, you're going to want some sticky pads, you're going to want some dot stickers and a clock. Because in our next phase, everybody's going to have 10 minutes to sketch some solutions to some of the problems that we talked about. And in this phase, everyone's going to participate. I don't care if you can draw or not, it does not matter. Good ideas can come from anybody. After those 10 minutes, everyone's going to have a chance to present for 2 minutes in front of the entire group. You're going to all stay silent until everyone completes their presentations. And once you're done, you're going to all vote silently. And what you're going to end up with, essentially, is a bunch of stickers on the wall that create a visual heat map of the best ideas. And those ideas are the ones that have risen to the top, and you should discuss them internally. You're going to take those and put them into your wireframe. So this is what our wireframe looked like at time for one of our galleries. So our hypothesis, one of them was changing the galleries to a vertical swipe versus a horizontal will lead to more engagement. At a top 3 dating app, reducing the length of the user sign-up process would lead to less attrition and more retention. And at a top 3 financial institution, adding in different imagery and labels, file size information would reduce confusion for users. These are our hypotheses. We're going to test these in our sprint. So our next phase is design. We're going to take our wireframes and we're going to make them look much more beautiful. And we're going to use tools like Sketch and Photoshop and Illustrator and After Effects to sort of create this realistic facade. If you guys aren't using Sketch already in your designs, I'd highly recommend it. It made my process 99% more efficient. I mean, it's unbelievable. So really, all you need is the illusion that something is real. A realistic facade. We don't need to actually code anything. Why would you spend costly development resources if you could use prototyping tools like InVision or UXPin to create something that visually looks the same and functionally works almost the same, and just get answers from your users about whether they liked it or not, and not put a lot of time and effort into it, and money, frankly, when you don't need to. So that moves us into our next phrase, which is prototyping. We mentioned some of these tools, InVision, UXPin, Keynote. These are awesome tools that get you about 90% of the way there in terms of demonstrating how something actually could work. I highly recommend using them. Our next phase is user testing. So user testing needs to be planned way ahead of time. At time, we had a whole team devoted to doing this, which was amazing. They had equipment, they had knowledge of how to conduct studies. These are called UX researchers. I recommend anybody who's interested in doing a design sprint hire somebody like this. And the truth is that 5 customer interviews is really all you need to get about 80% of the answers. Why waste your money on extra users to study? Studies like this are very costly when you can get pretty much all the answers you need. This was cited from, I believe there was some study done probably about 5 or 10 years ago by like IBM who cited this. User studies, as I mentioned, can get expensive. So look to tools like Craigslist or usertesting.com or Lookback to be able to do these types of tests at a much lower cost than hiring a firm that may be extremely expensive. You could probably spend about 30 to 40 grand on a study. This is a much cheaper alternative. So finally, in our last phase, we're going to either learn and repeat or develop and launch. At this point, we want to marry up our qualitative data with our quantitative data. So what we're going to do is decide if we want to move this back into our sprint because we haven't addressed all the problems, or we're going to move this into development, and now we're going to match up that quantitative and qualitative and make sure that they're in sync. Because when we move into Agile, we want to see that those things are actually working based on the same anecdotes we heard in our qualitative sessions. So some of our sprint answers from time. Well, vertical scroll actually did lead to higher engagement. That was amazing. A shorter sign-up process did lead to less attrition and higher retention at a top 3 dating app. And finally, more detail led to less confusion at a top 3 financial institution. So these things were really working. We were seeing results, and these ideas weren't exclusive to just one person. They were brought together by a team of people. Finally, how do you bring UX and design thinking into your company? When I got to Time, they had never heard of design thinking. They had never heard of Sketch, usability tests, prototyping. They had no idea what any of these things were. And I started to bring these tools in-house. And I started to tell my story. Some people were into it and some people weren't, frankly, but I started to give presentations internally, build it up very small, and all of a sudden, we started to run design sprints and seeing real success. I had the head of the photography department come up to my boss and say, we just love the design sprint process. We've never felt included before. This feels amazing. Tell Adam to keep doing it. So I started to do this, and I started to tell this story at conferences all over the world, and it started to have a lot of impact. I had to be the champion of my own cause. And if you're interested in doing design sprints in your company, you will too, because it's an uphill battle. It's very difficult to climb sometimes. And that brings me to my next point. If the hill's too steep to climb, hire an expert. There are great companies out there like IDEO and Frog and McKinsey and Deloitte and, well, Academy also to help you guys train your teams and learn how to do this stuff. I like to say, teach a man to fish. So The last point, prepare for the future. So the thing is that MBA programs all over this world are teaching students now about design thinking in their companies, in their classrooms rather. Companies like Deloitte and McKinsey, some of the biggest consulting firms in the world, now have digital divisions focused exclusively on design thinking. So you need to prepare your companies for the future because the next generation of leaders are going to be design thinkers. Start thinking about it now. Start applying these principles, and you're going to have some serious success. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for having me today. My name's Adam Perlis. If you have questions and want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on Twitter @AdamPerlis, or take a look at my website, academy-ny.com. And thank you guys so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Adam. As we are in an environment of design thinkers, there might be some questions for you that people want answered right away. You told them how to get in touch with you later on and wrap the fairground here, but if there's anything burning on your hearts and minds right now, just let one of our volunteers know and we'll get a mic to you as quickly as we can.
Looks like we got one over there.
There we go.
Hello. Do you think swiping is the new best way for navigation, like in Snapchat?
Well, in which way are you referring to? Like,
Yeah, to do swipe gestures, to swipe for navigation.
just
Left,
in
right.
general, left, right,
Yeah,
up,
in
down?
general, in UX design.
Yeah, I mean, look, swiping obviously has become the norm. You look at apps like Tinder, who sort of revolutionized the idea of swiping left and right as a way to, demonstrate a particular vote, yes or no. Of course, Snapchat has been experimenting with lots of UX solutions. So yeah, I absolutely think that swiping is the new paradigm. And of course, mobile usage is, I think, over 80% now. I can't remember the exact number, but the Mary Meeker report came out recently. And I mean, just mobile has overtaken desktop completely. So yeah, swiping, of course, is the new paradigm, and now more than ever, I'd say.
Yes, there's a question over there. Might take a while for a mic to reach you, but we've got one right here. Go ahead.
All right. So, how do you define what kind of problems actually fit that 5-day process?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about the user research phase that happens ahead of time, right? Discovery. So, for example, some of the clients that I'm working with now, what we've done is we've conducted a bunch of stakeholder interviews. We're speaking with some of their users. We're looking at their complaint logs. And we're basically pulling out some insights into what are the areas that we find the most problems. And we narrow them down with our clients, essentially in the same room and say, all right, these are the top 3 issues that we need to focus on. And so once we do that, then, essentially we use those as our sprint, how might we questions.
All right, in the spirit of a true questionnaire sprint, we'll have another one over there.
In your experience, how can design sprints be implemented in a company? What is the best way to do it if the company has no experience with it at all?
So, I mentioned before about being the champion of your own cause. I think that it requires somebody to be extremely passionate about doing it, just like I was. Starting small and trying to convince a few people that, this is the right thing to do. And it doesn't take much because, I think that once you start to read about how design thinking is being applied, all the success stories that are out there, I think that a great place to start would be, for example, reading the Sprint book. They do a phenomenal job of, for probably $14.99 or whatever it costs to buy it, of explaining how the process works. Of course, once you get into it, it's not as easy as maybe the book makes it seem. I think it takes a little bit of work to work out the kinks and learn, from your mistakes. I certainly did when I first started doing this, probably about 2 to 3 years ago. And I think it requires someone who's going to be a self-starter and be willing to be that facilitator standing in front of the room and essentially talking to everybody.
Okay, yeah,
Oh,
we've got one more question. Oh, and one back there. Yep, we'll go there first. And bring a mic over here.
Hello. Quick question. In terms of
I'm sorry, I can't see you.
Over there, right back
Sorry.
there. Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
In terms of the sketching, does every single team member participate in the sketching, or is it only just a couple members?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you how many times someone said, well, I can't draw, so I don't want to participate. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a diverse set of opinions, and it doesn't matter if you can draw or not to present a great idea. So I don't care if you're drawing stick figures or Picassos. Like, you're going to participate because the whole point of design sprints and design thinking is to have a team environment where a diverse set of opinions are heard. And so, yeah, absolutely, everyone's included.
You said that these design sprints happen in teams, and do you think that there's a limit to the size of that team? And from your experience, what size works best for having a really innovative outcome?
Yeah, so I learned my lesson very early on when I first did my first ever design sprint, and I invited, I think, 17 people, which was a horrible mistake. And it turned out that essentially it was too many people to deal with, and I found that about 5 to 7 people is a much more manageable number. And so, the people, as I'd mentioned on that slide, there's really some essential people that really should be there the entire time. Usually that's a developer, a product expert, and a designer, and of course your facilitator. Likely your boss doesn't need to show up in the middle of the sprint, really just at the beginning, so they can sort of hear what the issues are. And then at the end, when we start to come up with some solutions, like sketching those solutions and voting, that's really when the boss needs to come in. So I think other than that, keep your team small. You'll put together some amazing ideas with just one representative from each department.
Okay, so it's a highly dynamic kind of process. And I think with that, let's take one last Q&A question.
Thank you.
Hi. So the 3 examples you gave were very much like apps or websites or whatever.
Yeah.
How applicable is this thought process for things like organizational issues or something else?
Yeah, I mean, I like to say that I think that design sprints and design thinking can be used for any type of process, whether that's a service, a strategy, or a product. You look at firms like IDEO, which are championed design thinking for industrial design, right? You look at things like, they also work with lots of clients like governments and to work more efficiently, or schools to teach better lesson plans. I believe that if you just bring a diverse set of opinions into the room, focusing on your users first, then you're going to have success in no matter what type of thing you're trying to design. Because again, designers are not just people who play with colors and pixels and fonts. They are people who design strategies. They design different ways of approaching problem solving. So that's what design thinking is all about, so absolutely.
Great. Great closing statement, I think. And with that closing statement, I'd like to thank Adam for being here. We're going to head into a short break. We'll be back here on the keynote stage at 4:30. With another keynote from Mark Schumacher and Serdar Kutucu. So see you right back here. Head a little out into the sunshine for a while, catch a bit of daylight. That's what we're going to do too, I think. And see you back here in a bit. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.